Welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by DraftKings Pick 6. Brandon Kravitz here along with Nick Whalen on this Tuesday. A Merry Christmas to all. Let's get you in and out and on your merry way. 14 games across the association last night. Everyone off today so that the NBA can get ready for Christmas. And you have a full slate yesterday because the NBA is making up for lost time. They already had to make up for lost time because of the in-season tournament, but 5 games on Christmas Day. And I don't know about you, Nick, but to me, the Christmas still belongs to the NBA. I love the NFL, but I'm not big on the NFL infiltrating Christmas Day.
I got no problem with it. As somebody who, you and I kind of both work in the industry, I've been able to strike an understanding with my family, with my wife's family. And it's now to the point where nobody questions it. Like 4 or 5 years ago when I would have to sneak away and like watch 5 consecutive NBA games on Christmas, the family wasn't thrilled about it. But now that I think they have a better understanding of the the impact that it has on our careers, it's now like encouraged. I go to my wife's family and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you need the game on? Let's put the game on." I'm like, you know what? That'd be great. Let's throw the game on. Why don't we?
Are you what percentage are you locked in though? So you're still spending time with family, but the games are on in the background. What percentage would you like?
I always travel this time of year with my iPad. I always have my laptop on me. So we'll be consuming everything on Christmas Day. I don't make any compromises when it comes to that. I'm not saying I'm like ignoring my family by any means, but it's going to be a great day, man. Like you love the NFL as much as I do. I mean, I'm a football guy. I'm going to be watching both of those games.
I like for everything to be in its bucket, and the NFL. It's a Wednesday. I don't know what the NFL is doing.
I don't care. I mean, look, it sucks from a scheduling perspective. Like, they've had to kind of like if you're the Chiefs, the Steelers, the Texans, and the Ravens, like you're just playing this weird 3-week like round robin where they're trying to build in just enough rest to justify it. Like I don't love it. It's so obviously a money grab, but I'm going to watch. I'll make that clear.
Oh, that it will all be consumed. It's just it's a lot of work. Well, I'll even have the Mickey Mouse broadcast going on because I have a 5-year-old.
Oh, so well, that's gonna be big.
He's
got to be fired up for Wolves Mavs.
He better be. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job as a parent and a host of this podcast. So I was in the building last night for the biggest upset on the slate, the Magic taking down the Boston Celtics, and yes, the Celtics were without Jason Tatum, but the Magic are without 3 of their top 4 leading scorers. Mo Wagner, unfortunately, out for the season with a torn ACL. Absolutely wild. And this coming just 2 days, Nick, after the Magic are down 22 entering the 4th quarter against the Miami Heat and battle all the way back. And all of a sudden, G League Trevelin Queen is playing a big role. For the fantasy folks out there, I don't know that Trevelin Queen should be someone you race to the waiver wire to go pick up, although if you needed a spot start, he could get it done. But he should be sliding back to not even the bench, but just a G League role once Paolo gets back. And I don't, unfortunately, have an update on that. But it was crazy what this team has done these last 2 games. Curious to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, Alex and I on Monday were talking a little bit about that game against Miami. I mean, outscored the Heat 37-8 in the 4th quarter. 37-8, just outrageous. And that was the Cole Anthony game for Orlando. Last night, I guess it was maybe was it the Tristan da Silva game? I don't know. Like the box score, I feel like doesn't really add up to Orlando winning this game. Like there was no like crazy performance. You mentioned Queen, who stepped into the starting lineup. Da Silva hit 4 3-pointers, but it's like Jalen Suggs was 5 of 13. He had an okay game. Like Goga Bitadze actually got tossed from this game in the second half, which was hilarious. I saw the video on Twitter where he clearly thought Kristaps Porzingis got tossed, and he's
he's hitting him with the
across the court, waving goodbye, and then you see him like, "Wait, me? They kicked me out?" And then
I know,
like he doesn't even dispute it. He's just like, "Oh man," and then turns around and walks to the locker room, which was
I didn't even see
incredible.
what Bitadze did. I guess they said that he hit him in the neck, but I didn't see that. Very frustrating from a betting perspective. I had Goga Bitadze, and I gave this one out on RotoWire channel, so it always hits extra hard. Not only do I have my own dollars on it, but the advice to the masses out there. Bitadze over his PRA at 24.5. He was at 20 with like 5-6 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, would have easily hit that, and he gets tossed. So that stinks. But the Magic get the cover, the under hits, and I think that that's the key right there. If you just look at how did this happen, it's defense. The Celtics hit 8 threes. That's their lowest of the entire season. That's how you beat this team, and nobody's really able to do that. Part of it's fortune, part of it's good defense, but that's how they got it done.
Yeah, you're right. The threes are what I was going to point out here. Not to take anything away from Orlando, because they are, consistently one of the best teams at both limiting attempts and limiting efficiency from three. But, Al Horford 1 of 5, Porzingis 0 of 4, Jaylen Brown 1 of 7, Peyton Pritchard 1 of 5. That doesn't happen very often for the Boston Celtics. But, the Celtics are still 22-7. But, they lost to the Bulls last week. They've taken some kind of odd losses here and there. They got tripped up by the Hawks earlier in the season. I mean, obviously nothing to worry about here with Boston, but it does feel like they've had more off nights than you would think. They haven't been nearly as good of a cover team this year as they were last year. But no Jason Tatum last night. So if you're a Celtics fan, you're watching this, screaming at your screen saying, "Hey, mention that Tatum wasn't out there."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is a factor, but they still should have been able to beat the Magic. You have Trevelyan Queen in the starting lineup. That's a team you ought to be able to beat. And I do wonder, there were pictures of Jason Tatum, leisurely walking through the hotel as he's getting ready for the game. He was announced out seconds before. I do a 30-minute pregame show. I didn't know Jason Tatum was out until I was finishing the pregame show. They just didn't tell you.
Yeah.
And I had to notice that he wasn't out on the court as the players were going through their introductions. That's how we found out. The NBA has to do something about that. I mean, it's an absolute joke. But it just feels like let's just roll the ball out there on the court and make sure that everybody's ready to go on Christmas. And I'm honestly surprised we don't see that more from some of these teams that are going to be featured on Christmas Day. Yeah. So I think that's part of what happened there. Philadelphia, San Antonio, they had a bunch of drama too. 2 ejections. One of them was rescinded. Wemby wound up taking a technical for flopping, which was absolutely the right call. Yep. The common criticism online seems to be that the league is going out of its way to protect Victor Wembanyama. Are you buying into that at all?
Not really. Not necessarily. I mean, I don't think they protect him any more than they do most superstars. And I think this criticism has been lobbed at a lot of, young superstars, right? I think you could say a lot of people complained about how LeBron, was officiated earlier in his career. You can go all the way back to Shaq and guys like that. And certainly on the other side of this game, I mean, I don't think people are necessarily happy with the way that Embiid, tries to trick officials consistently as well. And obviously he was tossed from this game, finished with just 9 points and 3 rebounds in 14 minutes, but still a good win, I thought, for Philly, which they'll take anything at this point. They're still sitting at 10-17. And, I think for this game to kind of become chaotic with the Embiid ejection and still get a huge game out of Maxey. Paul George wasn't great, but, kind of your second option. Gershon Yabusele really stepped up for them off the bench, played 32 minutes with Embiid getting tossed, 6 of 8 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. So, it's just a very Sixers thing to happen, last game before Christmas, and you got Embiid getting tossed, and you got, people were going at Embiid for, how he was getting in the face of the referee, which, you don't love to see that, but I thought that was a bit of an overreaction. I think it is interesting to look at, the Christmas Day lines for tomorrow. Philly +10 on the road.
I was going to throw that one at you because Boston has been a putrid home cover. They're 5-10 against the spread at home. Philly's been turning it on lately. They've won 7 of their last 10 games. I feel like it's a honey trap to take the Philadelphia 76ers plus the 10. Yeah. Great time to back the Celtics is when they just lose in embarrassing fashion to a depleted Magic team. So Boston's probably the smart side, but that's a hard bet to make right now.
Yeah, I agree. They've had some of these kind of weird games at home where even sometimes they'll win, but it's not as convincing as you would think. I think with Tatum coming back, we probably see a rebound here. I think if you're the Sixers, like the last thing you want to see coming into this matchup is Boston having its worst 3-point shooting night of the season. It's like, what are the chances that happens again? Probably not great. And 10's a big number, especially for a team like Philly that we know is better than its record when its guys are out there. But with the way the NBA works, it's like you just if Boston hits 16 threes, they're probably covering the 10. And they've done that, it feels like, more often than not this season. So I still would have to lean Boston at home, assuming Tatum is out there, which I think he will be. But, it's more in stay away territory for me. I'm looking at some of the other games. Like I would almost rather take the Knicks at home -9. They've actually been kind of a shaky-ish home team when it comes to covering as well. But I think we have a huge discrepancy, in terms of offensive potential with these two teams. Knicks once again put up a great game last night. Like that, their top 6, top 7 is just so dialed in right now. We can talk about their depth issues, and they've been healthy pretty much the entire way so far, so it hasn't really been a problem yet. Maybe they have to address that later on, but I feel like this Knicks team is rolling right now, and I kind of like Dallas -5.5. They are one of those teams that is prone to kind of no-show games, but I can't back Minnesota right now, man. This team is just so broken. They lose last night to the Atlanta Hawks, ended up getting outscored 35-19 in the fourth quarter, led that game going into the fourth and ended up losing by 13. And it's your classic Timberwolves box score where it's like, all right, Edwards took a ton of shots. Randall took a ton of shots. He turned it over 8 times. Naz Reid gave them a good game off the bench. That's it. I mean, they are starting 3 non-offensive threats essentially every single night. And Naz Reid is like your only offensive threat off the bench. I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker has basically given them more than Dante DiVincenzo this season. And DiVincenzo, was coming off of one of his better games. He goes 2 for 8 in 19 minutes last night. I think it's a team that's still kind of coasting on reputation from last year. They're 14-14. To me, they've shown us who they are. They've been healthy, and they're nothing more than an average team.
It's 100% accurate. I think if you're taking Minnesota, which by the way, I already have, I got them at +6, and I think that's one of those situations where you need to really be anal about the number, because you're adding an extra possession. +6 is a key number in the NBA. I'm going with the revenge factor here because Dallas ousted this team that was rolling in the playoffs last year, and this is the spotlight game where they can kind of get a little bit of that mojo back. I think this is going to be a huge day for Anthony Edwards in this sort of spotlight against this particular opponent. But you're right. On the season, Minnesota has been really nothing all that impressive. So you need a big game from Gobert. You need a big game from Anthony Edwards. But I'm going to put my faith in that happening. But I would recommend getting the 6. And I think by the time you get the tip off, it should kind of stretch back to that. My favorite bet on the board would be Philly Boston over 222. That Boston defense, I think, is part of the reason we're not seeing the same sort of blitzkrieg from this team. They're still knocking down a ton of threes, more than any team in the NBA, but the defense is on the back end of the top 10 in the NBA. I think they've slipped a little bit, and Philly has started to figure some things out offensively. That's really the only bet on the board right now that I'm absolutely in love with. I want to take the Spurs, but every time I bet on San Antonio and Victor Wembanyama, he lets me down. I cannot get this guy right. Props, Spurs, points. I can never seem to hit it with San Antonio, because you don't know what version of him you're going to get. Are you going to get the 40-point Wembanyama, or are you going to get 16 points and looking frail out on the floor and flopping? You just don't know what you're going to get with him.
Well, I think there's somewhat of a disconnect between like the numbers Wembanyama puts up and just how successful the Spurs are. And I'm not saying it's like empty calories by any means. It's more about just they don't have that many options beyond him. You look at last night, it's like Jeremy Sohan giving you 15, 8, and 3. Like that feels like kind of his peak. Chris Paul's played well for the most part. Devin Vassell's been okay, but they don't have that many options. Like Julian Champagnie has been an alarming, alarming piece for this team. Like they need him to score. And I think you would think with Wembanyama out there, had 8 blocks last night. I think 7 of those came in the first half. They would be a better defensive team, and they're really not. They're still a bottom 10 defense on the year. They're a bottom 10 defense over the last 10 games. And I was looking into some trends, when I was trying to settle on my bet for this game, and it's kind of a weird one, but the Spurs have really cleaned up when they have a rest advantage. They're 6-1 against the spread when they have a rest advantage. They're an NBA worst 4-11 against the spread when they're on equal rest as their opponent, which will of course be the case on Christmas Day.
Do you force bets in there on Christmas just because it's it's an NBA holiday?
Yes, I do. Partially because I have to for my job. But yes, no, of course. I mean, you got to have something going on, right? Like you don't want to just cruise into this Christmas slate, whether it's NBA or NFL, with nothing on the line. So yeah, for a standalone like this, I'll force some things.
I
don't know
wish
if
that
that's the term I would like to use, but yes.
I'm completely with you. I wish my percentages over the years were better as far as it go betting on that first game with the Knicks.
Yeah.
It would start the day off so well if we could just get a dub out of the gate. We're going to get into a question for each one of these teams playing on Christmas in just a moment. But right now, the latest from DraftKings Pick 6 and our guy, Nick Whalen.
Here at RotoWire, we're proud to be partnered up with DraftKings Pick 6 this NBA season. Think your team will score more than 100 points tonight? How about your favorite point guard making more than 4 3-pointers? Check out DraftKings Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy basketball and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. So for hoops, we're talking points, assists, rebounds, etc. Lock in those picks, compete against opponents for your shot at huge cash prizes. Go download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. That's code ROTOPICK for new Pick 6 customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, let's go rapid fire through these NBA Christmas Day teams. We'll start with the San Antonio Spurs. My question for you, Nick, has Stephon Castle's rookie campaign been a disappointment thus far? His numbers a little bit all over the place. The three-point shooting, not there.
I would say no, it has not been a disappointment. I think we kind of knew what the deficiencies were coming into the season with Castle, and three-point shooting would have been at the top of the list. He's been a little bit shakier lately. It was pretty good last night against Philly. Only played 13 minutes in that game, was in some foul trouble, but still gave you 17 points. Prior to that, he had been in single digits over the last 3 minutes, have been down a little bit of late, but he went through a really nice stretch, really encompassing most of the month of November and even into early December. I mean, we're talking 15 games where he gave you 15 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, shot 41% from the field. Not great, but for a rookie guard on a bad team, you can live with that. And really the 3-point shooting is what's dragging that down. I mean, he's taking over 5 threes a game and hitting them at about a 32% clip. But again, that's what you expected from Stephon Castle coming into the year. And I think overall he's been a positive. He's the clubhouse leader right now in the rookie of the year race at 2-1 at DraftKings. And that says certainly more about the rookie class. The fact that Yves Missi is next on the list at plus 220. And then, Zach Edey, who's barely played, is at 6-1. It's an underwhelming rookie class. We knew that would be the case coming in. But I think Stephon Castle's been about the player that you would think he would be so far. And I think he's somebody that's going to continue to get better and better as this year goes along. So no, not a disappointment for me.
For the New York Knicks, Tom Thibodeau says, screw your load management. The 5-man unit for the Knicks leads the NBA in minutes logged. Is this a sustainable practice?
Very good question. They lead the NBA in minutes. They lead the NBA in combined points. I'd have to double check on this. I know as of like 2 weeks ago, they were averaging the most points ever for a starting 5 in NBA history. It's working right now. It's a question of, will this hold up over 82 games? And, the Knicks have been one of the healthiest teams in the NBA so far this season. They've had a couple guys in and out, but they've avoided any of these long-term injuries, save for Mitchell Robinson, who's yet to play this season. History suggests that it's probably not sustainable. Not only is that starting 5 playing almost every night, but a lot of these guys are playing, big time minutes, right? Where Mikal Bridges had a stretch where he was averaging almost 39 minutes per game for a full month. And I will say for the most part, guys like Brunson, Hart, Bridges, Towns, like they have pretty decent track records when it comes to health. Towns, it feels like either stays completely healthy or misses half the season. And you can kind of say the same thing about Anunoby, which, by the way, OG was incredible again last night in that win over the Raptors. 31 points on 13 of 15 from the field. They need to add more depth at some point. You know, we're starting to see more campaign. You know, Miles McBride's been good off the bench, but I think they need one more piece. Like another wing would be huge for this team. You know, all due respect to Precious Achiuwa, I think they could upgrade there. So it's sustainable for now. But, you know, knowing how Tom Thibodeau tends to run these guys into the ground, I'd be a little bit concerned as far as, okay, how many of these guys are healthy and kind of fully ready to go when it comes to March and April?
Yeah, history not on his side there. I'm going to combine the T-Wolves and the Dallas Mavericks because you have a guy that the NBA seemingly wants to anoint as the face of the league in Anthony Edwards, and then the guy that feels like the more natural fit, even though he's not an American-born player, but Luka or Anthony Edwards, if you had to assign one as face of the league status, which one would you give it to?
Well, I think Luka is still the much better player. It's just if we're talking face of the league, though, I think that includes more than the on-court stuff. And Anthony Edwards, I think, kind of meets everything you want. If you're the NBA, if you're a shoe company, you know, somebody who has that personality, super unique guy, super confident, sometimes almost too confident. You know, he just got fined. I think it was $75K for yet again, like dropping 8 F-bombs in a post-game interview. So maybe there's still some polishing that needs to be done there. And, you know, I think Luka, like a lot of these international guys, like, is he interested in being the face of the league? I'm not really sure. You know, it seems like he obviously loves basketball and, you know, was in the NBA finals last year, but he's not necessarily the most marketable guy. And a lot of the reason for that is beyond his control, you know, just being Slovenian and playing in America. But, you know, I would still, you know, if we're saying like, who would you rather have if you're starting a team? Who would you rather have as an owner, you know, representing your franchise? Like it's still Luka to me. It's still Luka. Yeah. All due respect to Edwards, but I mean, Luka's 25 years old, man. I mean, it's crazy what he's already accomplished and the player that he could still become. So I'm going Doncic on this one.
All right, we've talked about Philly and Boston, so I'm going to skip those teams. Let's move to the LA Lakers and the Golden State Warriors, who have very obvious question marks at the top of the food chain. LeBron James and Steph Curry. Are we watching the end of those two careers right now, or are we writing them off too soon? LeBron has turned it back on, and it's not getting as much press as the downturn did, but curious to get your thoughts on this as we see two guys in the twilight of their career. We don't really know when the end is going to hit.
Yeah, I mean, with LeBron, we've been doing this for a decade. Honestly, it's ridiculous. I mean, he's having like, you know, this terrible season where, you know, the on-off numbers are awful, and I get all that, but he's averaging 23, 9, and 8, essentially as a 40-year-old, which is insane. And you know, he had his little absence a couple of weeks ago, missed a couple of games, came back and started to look a lot more like old LeBron, which we've seen from him, you know, throughout his career a couple of times. So you know, as far as have we seen the end of these guys contending for titles? I would say probably. You know, I think Golden State has a little bit more flexibility as far as they could try to, you know, bring in a Jimmy Butler type. I don't think Jimmy Butler is salvaging the Warriors season by any means. I think they're kind of on parallel paths this season where both teams could get in. I wouldn't feel great about either team, you know, making the West Finals or certainly making the NBA Finals. So, you know, my guess is that there's been some reporting that like maybe next year could be LeBron's final year. I mean, Curry's still playing at a high level. I think the way his game should just, you know, continue to age really well. He's not going to be that same, you know, crazy high volume scorer that he was at his peak years. But, you know, he's somebody that could easily hang on till age 40 if he wanted to, just kind of, you know, transitioning into more of a, you know, an off ball player if he has any interest in that. So I think we've seen the end of these two as like the true faces of the league, guys who you could just pencil in to meet in the finals or meet in the playoffs. But, you know, with the numbers that they're putting up, I really don't think, you know, you think of like how, I don't know, Vince Carter or Dwayne Wade or Dirk Nowitzki, you know, looked in their final couple seasons. Like it still feels like we're like 3 or 4 years away from that phase for LeBron or Curry.
Yeah, LeBron just had his slump. He's bounced back, and now we're seeing a little bit of that from Steph Curry. The final game on Christmas, the Nuggets and the Suns, two teams that are heavily reliant on their top superstar, Kevin Durant and Nikola Jokic. Will either of these two teams go shopping after Christmas?
You know, I think Denver probably will. You know, I think there's a little bit there's pressure on both teams. I think with the way they've built these rosters to win now. Denver, to me, I think it's a little bit easier for them to swing a deal. I think Michael Porter, it's not the best contract, but there could be some appeal there. Aaron Gordon could be a piece to move. It'd be tough, I think, for Denver to replace either of those pieces. It's hard to come up with, all right, who's the guy that you're bringing in that makes you feel dramatically better. But I think Denver at least has the flexibility to do it. Phoenix is always mentioned with any player who conceivably shakes loose, and they're on the Jimmy Butler list. It's like, who are you trading for Jimmy Butler? Like, you're not trading Booker, you're not trading Kevin Durant. Nobody wants Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal has a no trade clause. Maybe he would like to go hang out in Miami, I guess, but I don't know why the Heat would be interested in bringing him in at all. So Phoenix has really no flexibility here. Like, maybe they can make some moves on the fringes, but with the Bradley Beal no trade, with Bradley Beal barely playing, with him not looking like the guy that he was in Washington a few years ago, I don't know what team is really interested in bringing him in and interested in giving you a better player back. So I think by default it has to be Denver.
Go ahead and hit us up on Twitter if you want us to answer your fantasy basketball questions for this week. And as we head in to the holiday, we are on a tight holiday schedule, so we're going to have to skip on out. That's going to do it for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by DraftKings Pick 6. I've been your host, Brandon Kravitz. He's the expert, Nick Whalen. You can find him littered across RotoWire.com. And remember, 4 episodes per week on this very channel. Nick, a Merry Christmas to you and a Merry Christmas to our listeners as well.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man. Squeezing it in on Christmas Eve. We appreciate it. And everybody enjoy the holiday and enjoy the Christmas Day slate.
Ho, ho, ho.